She was louder than life itself. Her laugh filled rooms before she entered them. But when the applause stopped, silence terrified her. Tallulah Bankhead was the brightest flame Broadway ever raised and the one that burned fastest. She lived on cigarettes, martinis, and risk. Hollywood adored her. Gossip columns depended on her. Yet behind the reckless wit was a woman who could never sleep without the sound of voices nearby. How did a Southern debutante become the most scandalous actress of her generation? And why did she spend her final years begging for company in an empty house? Stay with this one. The truth about Tallulah hides where glamour turns to smoke. Born in Huntsville, Alabama, in 1902, Tallulah's first lullabies were political speeches. Her father, William Bankhead, would become Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. Her uncle and grandfather were senators. She grew up among power and privilege, where every word carried consequence. But politics bored her. From childhood, she wanted to perform dressing up in lace curtains, reciting Shakespeare for her dolls, and begging to be sent north to study drama. Her mother died of blood poisoning soon after Tallulah's birth, leaving a hole she never filled. It was said she spent a lifetime trying to charm the silence that loss left behind. At 16, she mailed her photograph to a film magazine contest and won a trip to New York. The family thought it harmless. They expected their rebellious daughter to get homesick and return to Alabama. Instead, she stayed and never stopped running. New York in 1918 was electricity incarnate. Jazz clubs, vaudeville, smoke-filled rooms where ambition thrived. Tallulah auditioned everywhere. When she didn't get parts, she charmed producers at parties until they remembered her name. Her southern drawl made her sound both naive and dangerous, exactly the combination the stage adored. Her early reviews were mixed, but everyone remembered her. She has something, one critic wrote, and it may be chaos itself. She lived in cheap boarding houses, drinking gin from teacups to look respectable. Fellow actors recalled how she flirted shamelessly with the press, whispering outrageous quotes she knew they'd print. Behind that bravado was a fear of being forgotten. "If you're dull," she said, "they kill you twice, once in the papers and once in their memory." By her 20s, she was famous in London. The British press nicknamed her the Alabama Tornado. She was exotic, fearless, and untamed. She called the king darling and chain-smoked through royal dinners. Her parties became legend. Champagne at noon, arguments by midnight, reconciliations by dawn. Noel Coward and Somerset Maugham adored her. Virginia Woolf reportedly found her exhausting. She made and unmade friendships in a single evening. She'd insult a duke, then charm him into laughter 10 minutes later. But success came at a cost. She contracted a severe infection in the 1920s, likely from complications of gonorrhea, which left her sterile. In an era when motherhood defined womanhood, that diagnosis crushed her. She masked grief with humor, telling friends, "My womb is as empty as a defrocked church." People laughed. She didn't. Beneath her brazenness was a wound she never spoke of without irony. She returned to America in 1931, a bona fide star. Paramount Pictures rolled out the red carpet. Her contract was lavish, her reputation notorious. But Hollywood demanded submission, and Tallulah had none to give. She refused to conform to the polished, demure image the studio wanted. When told to lower her voice for the camera, she snapped, "Lower yours, darling." Her first few films, Tarnished Lady, Faithless, The Cheat, were uneven. Critics admired her presence, but not the movies. Studio executives whispered that she was unmanageable. She'd rewrite lines, skip rehearsals, disappear for days. Some of that behavior was fueled by addiction. Some was pure rebellion. She hated the falseness of film sets, the waiting, the repetition. "Darlings," she once told reporters, "film acting is like waiting for paint to dry, only the paint gets paid better." After a handful of flops, Paramount dropped her. For most actresses, that would have been the end. For Tallulah, it was liberation. She returned to Broadway, her true church. In 1939, she landed the role of Regina Giddens in The Little Foxes. Lillian Hellman had written the part for someone cold, manipulative, and intelligent, a woman who destroys her own family for wealth. Tallulah brought heat and humor to it, turning a villain into something tragically human. The performance was electric. Audiences gasped, critics praised, and her peers watched in awe. For once, the chaos served the art. Behind the scenes, she was unraveling. Years of cigarettes had damaged her lungs. She lived on champagne and sedatives. Friends said she never slept. She drifted between parties and rehearsals like a ghost in fur. Yet she was fiercely generous, writing checks for struggling actors, adopting stray dogs, visiting hospitals unannounced. She'd show up at midnight with gifts and jokes, then vanish before morning. Fame was her camouflage. During World War II, she poured herself into patriotism. She sold war bonds, performed for troops, and recorded radio dramas for morale. Soldiers adored her unfiltered humor. When one asked what he could do for her in return, she reportedly said, "Darling, win the war so I can get back to sinning." Hollywood took notice again. Alfred Hitchcock cast her in Lifeboat, 1944, a survival drama set entirely on a small raft. Filming was grueling hours in cold water under blazing lights, but she delivered. Critics called it one of her finest performances. She won the New York Film Critics Circle Award, her first major film honor. Yet even triumph carried friction. Hitchcock later joked that she complained her makeup melted, her hair frizzed, and her ego got seasick. Tallulah laughed louder than anyone, then went home and drank herself to sleep. Her radio career exploded soon after. Hosting The Big Show from 1950 to 1952, she became the voice of post-war glamour, witty, unpredictable, and sharp-tongued. She sparred with guests like Groucho Marx, Bing Crosby, and Ethel Merman, often stealing the spotlight. The show's lavish budget and her charisma made it a hit until television killed radio variety. When NBC canceled it, Tallulah was crushed. She tried television guest spots, but her unfiltered style clashed with scripted formats. Sponsors feared her tongue. By the mid-1950s, she was more curiosity than queen. Younger stars like Marilyn Monroe and Elizabeth Taylor inherited the attention she once commanded. They learned from her playbook sexual independence, quotable wit, but left behind her vulnerability. She felt both proud and displaced. "I taught them everything except how to survive it," she said once, half smiling. Money evaporated quickly. She never saved. She lived like tomorrow would applaud. Her Park Avenue apartment turned into a museum of faded glory paint. Peeling, mirrors cracked, yet still perfumed with Chanel and gin. She surrounded herself with memorabilia, old playbills, fan letters, photographs from nights long gone. When friends visited, she'd gesture toward them and say, "All ghosts, darling. Except me, I'm still haunting myself." It wasn't entirely true. The theater still loved her. In the late 1950s, Tennessee Williams, who admired her boldness, invited her to perform in The Skin of Our Teeth. And later, The Milk Train doesn't stop here anymore. He saw in her the same mix of irony and pain that haunted his own heroines. During rehearsals, she could be magnificent one night, disastrous the next. Williams reportedly wept watching her stumble through lines, then explode with brilliance minutes later. "She's a hurricane," he said, "and hurricanes can't be scheduled." Health crises multiplied. She battled pneumonia, influenza, and bronchitis. Her voice grew gravelly from emphysema, yet she refused to slow down. She was terrified that if she stopped performing, she would cease to exist. "I've lived off applause," she said, "and like any addict, I need my fix." Her 1956 Broadway turn in A Streetcar Named Desire as Blanche Dubois, ironically, was mesmerizing but erratic. Some nights she radiated heartbreaking fragility. Others she forgot lines and cursed mid-scene. Critics were divided. Fans stood in ovation anyway, sensing it might be her last great storm. In private, she mourned the world that had moved on without her. The star system she'd once defied was gone, replaced by management, image consultants, and contracts that banned improvisation. The very rebellion that made her iconic now made her unemployable. Younger producers whispered that she was too risky. She responded with a grin and another cigarette. "Risky," she'd say. "Darling, that's just another word for alive." By 1960, she lived mostly in isolation. Friends came and went. Servants quit frequently, unable to keep pace with her moods. She slept odd hours, kept bottles in every drawer, and talked to portraits on the wall. When asked why she didn't seek help, she said, "I've been analyzed, darling." The doctor ended up on the couch. Her humor, once dazzling, had become armor. Her final professional chapter came with The Milk Train Doesn't Stop Here Anymore. In 1963, she saw it as redemption, one last confrontation with mortality. But her body couldn't keep up. During performances, she slurred lines, gasped for breath, and sometimes had to be helped off stage. Audiences pitied her. Critics were merciless. One review simply read, "The train has left Tallulah behind." After the show closed, she retreated to her apartment. She rarely left. Neighbors heard her coughing through the walls, occasionally singing to old records. Visitors described her wrapped in silk robes, surrounded by cigarette smoke so thick it blurred her silhouette. She'd pour drinks for imaginary guests, toast to invisible memories, and then laugh low and broken. In December 1968, she was found dead in her bedroom. The coroner listed pneumonia, emphysema, and malnutrition. She weighed less than 100 pounds. On the nightstand was a pack of Chesterfields, a half-finished martini, and a Bible her father had given her decades earlier. The radio was on. Even in death, she needed noise. When news broke, tributes poured in. Newspapers called her the last great personality of the stage. Actors who had mocked her excesses now spoke of her bravery. Bette Davis, who had long admired her, said, "Tallulah lived exactly as she pleased and paid dearly for it." The New York Times obituary captured her contradiction. She made rebellion a form of grace. Today, her name survives as shorthand for theatrical audacity. Drag performers imitate her voice. Film historians cite her as the blueprint for liberated female stardom. Yet few remember how modern her struggle truly was. The battle between image and identity, the pressure to perform even when empty, these are the same forces that still swallow stars today. She was living proof that charisma can both crown and crucify. What remains remarkable is how fiercely she kept her humor intact. In one of her last interviews, when asked what she wanted engraved on her tombstone, she said, "Excuse my dust." That quip, stolen from Dorothy Parker but perfectly Tallulah, was her final rebellion laughter in the face of decay. She never had children, but she left descendants in spirit. Every actress who refuses to be polite. Every performer who turns pain into performance. Even in her ruin, she showed what it meant to live on one's own terms. And maybe that's the truest legacy. Tallulah Bankhead wasn't destroyed by fame. She simply refused to live any other way. The tragedy wasn't that she fell, it's that she lived too vividly for a world that demanded restraint. Her story endures because it's more than gossip. It's prophecy. For every new celebrity who burns too bright, you can still hear her warning whispered through cigarette smoke. Darling, fame is a spotlight. Beautiful, blinding, and it never warms you. So if you've stayed with this far into her story, remember that behind every dazzling performance is a heartbeat that fears the quiet. And if stories like this speak to you about the fire behind the fame and the loneliness behind the light, subscribe and stay close. Because legends like Tallulah Bankhead never really die. They just step off stage, leaving echoes for the rest of us to listen to.